So when I first came to India, I had a number of preconceived notions in mind. All these notions that came from the media. This is in fact my first time here in India. And I thought that as a young conservation scientist, I'd come here and I'd solve the world's problems and I would, with one fell swoop, just fix everything. Now, of course, the thing that I learned here in India is that these problems are a lot more complex than they seem. And to illustrate that, and really what I want to say is that it's very complex in the sense that when we tell these stories as black and white, this side versus that side, but it's an extremely complex process. And so I want to illustrate that with a story, actually, with how I came to learn about this complexity and the problems that we as conservationists do face. So I did a little bit of sightseeing in addition to some of the work that I was doing. I gave a talk at Bangalore University with a friend of mine who's here in the audience, and so we want to take a little bit of sightseeing, just see the lay of the land around the area as well. To stretch our legs, we took a short detour at this pier, this small local fishing village just on the outside, a few hours away from Pondicherry, and we decided just to stretch our legs and go take a look at what was on this pier. Now, upon entering this pier, we were greeted with the sight, and I suppose we can show that picture, of just hundreds of thousands of dead animals and lots of sea life. These fishing vessels that were coming in and they were unloading just piles and piles and piles of aquatic life, from crabs to shrimp and many species of fish, and even sea snake, which I thought was incredible as an aquatic ecologist to see. Now, the big thing that really struck me was, well, first of all, the smell. You can imagine what it's like walking into a pier full of piles of sea life that have been sitting on a boat for quite a while in the sun. And as my friend can attest, he's being a plant biologist, he was not a huge fan of that. But as a student working with fish and in the field of fish behavior, I'm kind of used to the smell of dead fish. Whether that's fortunate or unfortunate, I'll let you decide, but I was very keen to explore a lot of the things that we could find in these piles. Now, one thing that we saw were these women that were crouched down and were sorting through all these piles. As each of these small fishing boats came into the pier, they would unload these massive amounts of fish, and these women would sort them. So they would keep some of these fish for the market or for personal consumption, and a huge amount of it was also wasted. It was bycatch. They were being put into this pile, and the reason for that is, well, you couldn't sell it. It wasn't, and you couldn't really eat it either. So what ended up happening is all this bycatch was being crushed down, be thrown back into the water to catch more fish. And as someone who grew up in and around the ocean, as a scuba diver, and as someone who studies fish, this was mortifying. I mean, these are creatures that I valued. I deeply valued. I read about them in books and seen them on TV. And to study them and to understand, and you start to feel and to talk, like what Professor Ganeshe was saying, this compassion for these species that you're studying. Now, I was just filled with emotions. I was frustrated, I was angry, I was thinking, how dare they, how could they? But this all changed when I met this guy, this man right here. He was a local fisherman, actually, just at this pier, and he had come off one of the boats, and he'd, I suppose, had a little bit of free time, and he was very interested in these foreigners looking around, staring at these dead fish, mere inches away from them, and taking a look what they are. He didn't speak English, and I didn't speak Hindi, nor the local dialect, but he saw from this massive fish that I had imprinted on my shirt that I was passionate about fish just as much as he was. And so without skipping a beat, he immediately began jumping from pile to pile to pile to pile to pick out all these really cool creatures that he could find. And he really wanted to share this. And because of that communication barrier, communication really came down to gestures, agreeable nods, pointing, and picking things out. But even through that, he showed a number of different species of crabs. He was able to convey that here's these crabs, these are males, these are females, these are the same species, these are different species, and this was without using any words. And it was at that moment that I realized I had it all wrong. It's very easy for us to blame those at the front lines. We see the poachers and the hunters, the poachers, the fishermen, the farmers, deforesting our lands, burning the forest down, or the poachers denuding our wild lands. These are things that we share on social media. These are messages they spread like wildfire. But I don't think that's the right way to go about it. The people at the front lines, like this fisherman right here, they care just as much about these areas, these oceans, these forests, more so than many of us, even in this room. Their livelihoods are dependent, or strongly, strongly dependent on these areas. And they're passionate about it, and they're right at that front line. And so it was with this interaction that I really realized just how it's incredible it was to share that experience and to understand. And so one of the other things that I've learned here in India as a foreigner and moving around is generally when someone starts helping you, they start following you around, they help you, they want a little bit of tip or something just to kind of pat the pocket a little bit. But when I offered him money, he refused. His only interest was to share his interest in all this aquatic life with people that were coming from another country, from another place, and in what way he could. Now, one side of the story is that we should be supporting these silent allies, that we should be communicating, telling their stories. But what I really wanted to say here today, give you a bit of a false cadence, a little red herring, is that there's many ways to tell a story. He was able to convey his interest, his passion in the aquatic world, and even showcase these different species of crabs and the marine life and this mantis shrimp that you see. He's grinning, wide grin, huge smile on his face, showing me. He was able to convey all of this without using any words, right? We, despite the fact that we could not communicate using the spoken word, we were still able to communicate and share these stories together. Now, one thing I want to say is when I was much younger, around 10, maybe 11 years old, I received a book. And this book completely changed how I viewed storytelling about the natural world. It's about this big. It had just pictures, the most beautiful pictures you could ever imagine from a part of the world I could only have dreamt about, especially at that age. There were birds, there were plants, and they were just incredible. And even now, having gone through those pages for years and years and years, it still excites me to open up that book and to see all the different species that are in that book and in those pages. And little did I know that eventually I would have the opportunity to visit and explore that actual region just as much as I explored the pages of that book. And I actually have that book right here with me. And on the cover of that book were two names: Sandesh Kadur and Kamal Bawa. So Professor Bawa, thank you so much for your support in all of my endeavors, both through scientific communication, as a scientist, as a mentor advising me for just many years now, and really, the patience putting up with me as a small kid, pulling at your watch and throwing over the potted plants, just making a huge mess, really. And having that patience and still supporting me all these years. Now, of course, it's not just me that can say this. I know this is something that everyone in this room can relate to. And your presence, it's felt throughout, just around the entire world, both directly through your students, but their students and their children, speaking as one myself. Right? I think I can speak as a child of a mentee. And so what I want to share, unfortunately, Sandesh couldn't be here to present this, but the other day, the day before yesterday, when we got in, Sandesh called me. We were just chatting on the phone, just to kind of prepare for what we would talk about here and kind of line up our talks. Unfortunately, he's not here today, but you'll see in a moment. And what he thought, he said, I have this idea. It's kind of late. And it's, it might be kind of hard to put this together, but we can do it. I was thinking, absolutely, you know what? This is an incredible idea, and we can do this. And I think it also speaks to the fact, and you'll see in a moment, it speaks to the fact that this was possible on such short notice because of your incredible mentorship throughout many years and just the passion that people have for you and the work that you've done and the incredible amount of help that you've given generously for many years. So I think we can play this short clip. It's about 5 to 8 minutes, and thank you very much.